Hi, so this is my presentation for my final project about an actual story that I experienced when I moved to England. This was within the first 2 to 3 months when I moved there. So, I've lived in Atlanta, Georgia for pretty much all of my life. And then by the time I started ninth grade, uh, my family decided that we were going to move to England and stay with family over there. It was roughly a 9 hour flight, and it was uncomfortable to say the least just because of how, tight an airplane is and having to spend 9 hours on a flight with your family is not the funnest thing to do. So, yeah. I moved to specifically Leamington Spa, which is south of London. It's about 1 to 2 hours away. And the main part of this story takes place in London when I went to a party. So, to begin, I was in my ninth grade year, which over there was what they would call year 10. And I was starting out the new school year, and I had a stepsister who was in the same grade as me. So she helped me get acclimated to the whole new English schooling system. And from there, it really helped me fit in better and understand the curriculum and how things are done over there. Well, when I started meeting up with new people and starting new conversations and new friendships, almost everybody walked up to me and wanted to hear me talk simply because I had an American accent. I was the unique oddball out. Everybody wanted to hang out with me. It was cool at first until I realized they didn't really care about me and just wanted to hang out with me simply on the basis that I was American. And they most likely wouldn't care if I was English. So I learned to get past that and try and enjoy myself living in a new environment and experiencing new things in a new country. I was doing okay for about a month until I actually met a group of friends that were genuine, which was nice at first, but of course, I was skeptical and constantly was analyzing my situation to determine whether or not they were actual genuine friends or people who were just, for the lack of a better word, using me. Well, the friends that I chose to make, the ones who were actually genuine apart from everybody else, they weren't exactly the A students. They were the bad kids. They were the ones that were the troublemakers, the jokers in class, the people who would fight authority and do drugs, smoke cigarettes, and all that stuff. So, being in a new environment, I almost looked up to them because they had lived in Leamington Spa their whole lives. So they knew what was what. They knew where the best places were. They knew what the best things to do were, especially on the weekends. And from this group of friends, I made numerous connections with people all across the school, across different grades, and even all over the town, which was nice. It was completely different from my experience of living in Atlanta, Georgia, where, well, I was kind of a loner. Come October, 2 months after I had first moved there, about a month after I made these genuine friends, it was coming around to be Halloween. Well, in England, Halloween isn't as big of a holiday as it is in the US. In fact, the US to my surprise, was practically the only place in the world that actually celebrated Halloween on such a massive scale like we do, where we have kids and parents and everybody coming out and trick-or-treating, going door to door, and such things like that. Well, after about a month being friends with this new group, I found myself changing. I found myself experiencing new things, almost elevating my boundaries, coming out of my bubble, if you will. I began to smoke cigarettes, I began to smoke weed, drink alcohol, and such things like that. All of which I would never see myself doing had I been living in Atlanta, Georgia. Maybe it was the shock of a new experience and trying to fit in at all costs. Maybe it was the sense that I had not been here or lived here before, therefore none of this actually really matters. Don't really know, but it's interesting to try and rationalize my reasoning. So, being one of the only Americans in town, I had made numerous connections with numerous people. Everybody wanted to hang out with the American kid. And because of that, I was invited to all of the parties that were being thrown around Halloween. So, I decided to go to a few of them in town at first. They were alright. I mean, I'd been to high school parties. I've seen movies and shows and things like that. They were all cool. And after hanging out with that specific group of friends, I had already been acclimated to the environment of drugs and you know, just pretty much anything in that spectrum. So it wasn't too much of a surprise going to these new parties. But like I said before, they were okay. Pretty much the run-of-the-mill standard Halloween party or high school party that you would see on TV or hear about from classmates. They weren't too significant. Although this is where my actual group of friends invited me to a party that was being thrown in London. I was shocked. I didn't realize they had actual connections all the way up into the capital of England, the biggest city in the country, London. So, I couldn't wait to have the opportunity to actually visit London because I had not been there before. I had never really been to any big city besides Atlanta, if you can even count that as an actual city. So I was thrilled, excited to go to this new big city that had all of these restaurants and environments to experience new things. Well, like I said before, my friends had a lot of connections in London, so I decided to join them to go to the Halloween party thinking everything was going to be okay. Well, I told my mom I was spending the night at a friend's house, a friend of my stepsister's, at their house, so she wouldn't be too worried or suspicious. I managed to save enough money to buy a train ticket to and back from London and hopped on the next train with my friends. On my way there, I saw numerous homeless people all around. Nothing like I've seen in Atlanta, Georgia. I mean, I was just shocked by the sheer quantity of people who were living out on the streets, begging for food, begging for money, begging for scraps. It made me very sad to see that. And it actually made me think, why are there so many people out on the streets? So, getting past all that, we finally arrived at the heart of London, the very essence of the city. Seeing clubs, parties, restaurants, people having great, phenomenal times. I was so excited. for what was to come. I could remember the cold, brisk smell of local fish and chip shops masking the London air. All I could smell was delicious food. Unfortunately, I hadn't had enough money to go spending on higher class, more expensive restaurants. So I made do with fast food restaurants like McDonald's, which is actually in England. Well, it's actually all over the world, which again I hadn't really known since I hadn't really been outside of Atlanta, Georgia. And to my surprise, Subway was actually there too. So I made my way through a few fast food restaurants, one local fish and chip shop, because I couldn't help myself due to the massive, breathtaking smell of delicious cuisines that were local and native to England. Well, after visiting London, going through the heart of the city and going sightseeing with my friends, it was finally becoming nighttime. So I followed my friends through a maze of street corners and eventually found myself at a bus stop which almost seemed like a scene out of Harry Potter, where it was almost secret. A secret way to the secret, massive, awesome party. I waited at the bus stop patiently with my friends, and being the troublemaking type, they messed with people coming by, and of course I kind of kept my head down because I didn't want to draw attention to myself, being as I was the foreigner, the American, and I also learned that they actually have a massive stereotype against Americans for being loud and obnoxious. So I sat quietly and patiently in excitement while my friends were dilly-dallying about messing with the local London population. Well, my friends were reminiscing on previous experiences they've had at this very same party. And to my surprise, it actually wasn't just a Halloween party. They threw parties all throughout the year, and they were all big, massive, secretive parties. And it was interesting and awesome hearing my friends going on and on and on about this party and the sheer scale and size and the amount of resources this party had. So I was thrilled. I couldn't keep my excitement. When the bus finally came up after what felt like hours of waiting, I leapt into the bus with excitement. I couldn't contain myself. The bus ride itself was mediocre. It didn't take too long, but being as I was anxious and excited to go to this party, it again felt like hours. Well, we finally arrived at the bus stop, and we got off, and we walked around for a few minutes, and I could finally hear music a block away. And it was loud, massive music, and I was surprised that the people living in the area weren't pissed off about the fact that they had massive, loud music playing. Well, I could have just followed my friends, but I also thought to myself, well, shit, maybe I could just follow the sound of the music, and that would take me there. But I followed my friends through what seemed like a maze of street corners and neighborhoods, all of which only took a few minutes to go through, seeing as London itself is a very compact city. Well, I finally saw a road lined with cars all around the block, and could only imagine what could be going on at the party, the amount of people and the diversity of the people at this party. Well, we finally got there to the door. My friend knocked on the door and shouted a keyword, which surprised me because there was a massive amount of people at this party. And I thought to myself, well, why would they have a keyword or a password? Did they just tell everybody what the password is? It really got me thinking. But they let us inside, and at first, as soon as I walked the doorway, my ears felt shell-shocked with the sheer loudness of the music, and I was just thrilled. I couldn't hear anything after the first 10 minutes, and then I finally regained my hearing. I split off from my friends to go get something to drink and hopefully find some alcohol, which I eventually did, which lightened my experience and only added to my excitement. Well, I started looking around, and I found some very beautiful women talking to each other in another room. My friends gathered me and basically almost forced me to go and talk to them. With the alcohol in my system, I couldn't contain myself. I met this one beautiful woman who I thought was just gorgeous, and after talking to her for about 30 minutes, I realized how intelligent she was, which only fueled my desire for her. Well, she finally asked me, "Do you want to really party?" And I had heard this very same line in numerous movies and TV shows, and I could only think what she meant by it. Being the naive American at the party, I happily went along, and she pulled me out to the side and rolled a blunt. And I thought to myself, well, that's alright. I mean, I've smoked weed numerous times before. But then she pulled out a bag of this brown stuff. And I thought to myself, what the hell is this stuff? Is she gonna want me to do it? Is she gonna make me do it? And being excited and anxious and slightly drunk and now high, my judgment was, well, not the best, for the lack of a better word. So, being the naive American at this party, I decided to think to myself, what the hell? What could go wrong? What could possibly be the worst that could happen? Well, she pulled out that bag of brown stuff and poured it out onto her phone. And I thought to myself, what is she doing? Is she really going to do this in front of me? And she snorted a line of this stuff, and she hadn't told me what it was. Well, she looked at me and smiled, and she poured me a line, and I looked at her, and I could only think to myself, why? Why do you want me to do it? So, being naive and intoxicated, I decided to do the line to not embarrass myself. Well, I was thrown back. I had to sit down on the couch for 20 minutes, all of which kind of disappointed her, and she kind of lost her interest. So I wasn't asleep, but I was just in a state of blissful happiness for a good 2 hours. I finally awoke from my trance of blissful happiness and looked around the party, searching for my friends. To my surprise, I couldn't find them. I started asking around, and nobody knew anything, so I thought to myself, did they really leave me at this party all by myself? My phone had died, so I had absolutely no contact with them. So I decided to go venture out into the London streets to hopefully find my way to a train station to get back home. Well, I was completely lost. I didn't know where I was. I didn't know how to get back. I didn't have a phone to navigate myself. And at this point, it was early in the morning, probably 3-4 o'clock in the morning, and nobody was out. So I after walking around for a good 30-40 minutes, I found a bridge with lights under it. And I thought to myself, oh, what's going on there? Could they help me get back to to my house, to my home? I made my way there, and I found a group of homeless people. And I started talking to them, and I'm sure they could notice that I was heavily intoxicated, not just from weed or alcohol, but because of this substance that I had taken. Well, I met this old man who was very, very kind to me and very sympathetic for my situation. He had a spare sleeping bag and told me that I should go to sleep, and when we wake up in the morning, he would help me find the nearest train station. Well, I fell asleep and woke up exactly at 9 o'clock in the morning. He woke me up and gave me a cup of coffee. He showed me just unbelievable kindness that I would never even think that a homeless person would show somebody like me. Again, maybe it was because I was American, I don't know. Well, after drinking that cup of coffee, he walked me to the nearest train station, and I couldn't believe his kindness. So, I gave him my phone number and told him that I would wire him money because of his kindness and efforts to help me out. I finally found the train station and hopped on the next train back to my town. On that train ride, I had so much to think about, all of which made me grow as a person. I later found out that what I had taken was, in fact, heroin, which absolutely shocked me. But I look back at it now, and it was a good life experience. It showed me that you can never really trust everybody, and that you have to be true to yourself, and you should never give in to peer pressures or anything like that. But once I got back to my house, I, in fact, wired that homeless man $100 money I had saved up before I made this trip to live in England. And he was thrilled, overjoyed. But this whole experience just gave me a lot to think about. And over the course of the next year that I was living in England, I was almost troubled because of this experience.